It's very gratifying to see so many of you here. Before I forget something really important, I don't get paid unless I give a plug to Humanities Iowa. And your librarian here was so on top of it, she booked my program in June of 15. Humanities Iowa is based in Iowa City, and they're partly funded by the National Endowment for Humanities. And one of their goals among their many programs is to bring speakers to all sizes of communities. And last year, I drove 12,000 miles all over Iowa. I did 90 programs. Only 10 of them per speaker are Humanities Iowa. So you got one of the 10 discounted fees, thanks to your librarian. So I want to be sure to thank them and acknowledge the important role they play in all kinds of cultural things that go on around our state. I also want to ask everybody to please sign the sign-up sheet, because that's one of their requirements too. Now, when I said that a lot of my fee gets paid by them, your local library pays a relatively modest amount, and then the rest of my fee is paid by Humanities Iowa. But as I've told people, I don't know if we're getting an echo or if it's a little too loud now.
Turn it down a little.
Yeah. How about that? Yeah. And tell me to project, and I will if you want me to, because I can. Because that's my kids and my grandkids. But anyway, so yeah, the fee to them tonight is pretty modest. But I have been told, and I know you're going to have a really good time. That's my main goal. I have been told I'm one of the better speakers in Iowa in the lower price range. I honestly was told that after one of my programs. Now, I'd like everybody, if you didn't already, grab a free publication from Meredith to take one there. There's some excellent Midwest travel guides there, and they say 2015 on them, but that doesn't matter because it's kind of timeless information. And you'll enjoy using those. Just throw it in your car. I also wanted to encourage people, if you don't have one of these Iowa travel guides, you're entitled to it as a taxpayer, and you just have to go to traveliowa.com and order it. It'll be mailed to your home. And it's very well organized. I'm sure there's a section in it about Trayer and the fun things to do here and in the neighborhood, some of which I'm going to talk about. Now, I'm Dan Karcher, and my program is Iowa's Hidden Treasures. So I love to talk about Iowa and travel around the state. And I'm one of these retired guys that just can't sit still, and my wife's a lot happier when I'm gone anyway. So I do programs like this all over. Earlier this week I was in Fort Dodge, and next week I'll be in Norwalk and your neighbor Grundy Center, I think. And I just love to stay on the go and explore Iowa while I'm doing my programs. I do some for kids and some for seniors and some for audiences like this. Libraries are my best customers. But, you know, Trayer isn't new to me because I did a segment when I was with IPTV a few years back on the Salt and Pepper Shaker Gallery. And I had to refresh my memory, so I went in and visited the nice lady who said she'd try to come after her committee meeting at the Methodist Church, but she was feeling bad because she didn't go last week, so she had to go to that first, and then she tried to come. Do you know who the curator is at the Salt and Pepper Shaker Gallery? Ella. And I did meet Ruth Rasmussen when I did my TV segment. But the thing is, being in Trayer stole my thunder because I always have the clincher to my program be the surprising things around the state. And one of the last ones I always mention is Trayer. If you collect anything, you have to see the Salt and Pepper Shakers. And not to mention the spiral staircase, which I went up to the top. I'm not much for heights, but I did it this afternoon. You can't walk the walkway anymore. But I met a lady here once that worked when that was a newspaper office, and she said it was just a beast in January when it was icy to have to walk across that. And I'm so impressed that you made that a festival. I picked up the flyer. Who would think a spiral staircase would make a town festival? But when you're in a small town, you have to think creatively, right? One of the towns I did my program in earlier this year was Burt, Iowa. Now, who's ever heard of Burt? Oh my gosh, I'm impressed. It's north of Algona, and I don't think it's more than a couple hundred people. But they have a library at the city hall, and I did my program there. And I always say, now, what is your town known for? And what's going to make me remember her? And they thought about it, and somebody said, well, there's the toilet toss. And I said, what? And, well, at our summer festival, we see what man can throw a toilet the farthest. And if you're a lady, you only have to throw the toilet tank. And I said, well, I hope you clean them first. And the guy looked at me and said, why? Ooh. But also recently, I've been exploring all over, and in your town, I saw something I didn't see on my previous trips, the butterfly garden. But I think the butterflies must have heard I was coming. I always talk in my kids program about the monarch butterflies and how we're trying to attract them again. And I didn't see one butterfly today. But the flowers, the wildflowers are beautiful. I think they were just taking a break because it was kind of the hot part of the afternoon. You're going to hear me mention a lot of places in my talk, and you're going to think I'm rambling, but I try to bring back as many memories or ideas for you as I can. And just make you feel good about Iowa and learn a little bit about Iowa, something maybe you didn't know, and give you some ideas for your travels yet this summer and fall. I always follow my stomach wherever I go. That's my priority, so you have to know that. So on the way here, has anybody ever had a pork tenderloin at the Flaming Office in Toledo? Okay, I hope I found the right place. Because when I did my program at Toledo a while back, they said, you have to go to this place on the square and get a tenderloin. Well, the only place I could see, it said serving food today, was this bar called the Flaming Office. And I said to the owner when I went in on my way here, why do you call it the Flaming Office? Did it burn down once or something? And he said, no, it used to be called the Office, and I'm with the fire department. So I thought, it was a good tenderloin. But who's been to St. Olaf, Iowa? Do you even know where St. Olaf is? Did a program in Elkader, which has to be one of the prettiest towns in Iowa, on the Turkey River in Jackson County, maybe? Definitely east of here, closer to the Mississippi. But I always wanted to go to this place I heard about, the St. Olaf Tap. Now, St. Olaf itself is not much of a town. You look like Times Square on New Year's Eve compared to St. Olaf. But I got there, and it was me and a farmer in a seed corn hat in this huge bar. And I'd heard about this legendary pork tenderloin. And this was just a month or two ago. And so I ordered it, 1.1 pounds. And she said, do you want the small, the medium, or the large? And I said, I'll go for the large, but that fed me for about 2 days. And it was a beautiful area of the state to visit, obviously, too. I've also been in your neighborhood to a number of towns in the area. Who's been to Quasqueton and seen Cedar Rock? Now, if you don't know it, Cedar Rock is one of the Frank Lloyd Wright houses. He only gave this special red tile with his initials to be put on 40-some houses. And that's one of them all over the world. And I wanted to see it and wanted to see it. Well, my problem is when I show up to visit a place, it's usually only open from 11:30 to 11:45 every third Tuesday of leap year. And that's not if the curator is having a nervous breakdown or having her appendix out. So this was like my third try, and I called ahead and they opened it just for me. But Cedar Rock on the Wapsie River, I believe, north of here, not on the Cedar River, but it's called Cedar Rock. It's the most beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright home. And they're now restoring the boathouse there, which is very interesting to see. Also, if you're into Frank Lloyd Wright, do you ever get to Mason City? Well, I traveled there a couple of times recently, And they have so many beautiful Frank Lloyd Wright homes. It's one of the best Frank Lloyd Wright repositories in the nation. And then they have the last remaining Frank Lloyd Wright hotel that's open, called the Park Inn. And it's right down there on the square downtown. And of course, following my stomach, you have to go to Susie Q's Diner, where the owner is a magician and he does tricks for you while you're waiting for your pork tenderloin. Or the Northwest Steakhouse, one of Iowa's legendary steakhouses. It's Greek, and it's been open since the 1920s by the same family. And you go there and you get Greek spaghetti with this specially seasoned steak, but you have to get there an hour early on Saturdays and sit outside till they open, because it's so darn busy you can't even get in. Another place I've been recently was Knoxville, Iowa. And I was the speaker at our Iowa Flag Day celebration this spring. Did you know we had an Iowa Flag Day? And the story of our Iowa flag, which was born in Knoxville, is that a lady named Dixie Gebhardt created this flag based on the flag of another country in Europe. What country would you think? France. And of course, part of that was because France owned this real estate for so many years and we were part of the Louisiana Purchase. But she was asked by an Iowa National Guard unit in 1917 to come up with an Iowa flag design because we had some servicemen down in Mexico and they had no state flag. And so she created this one with the bald eagle and our motto, our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain, and modeled it after the French flag and got the copyright to it and gave it to the state. And so that's the story of our flag created by Dixie Gebhardt of Knoxville. And they're very proud of the fact that our flag came from there. Well, we're going to keep things pretty much to an hour. The only damper on our program today is that, literally damper, is you had a problem in the basement of your library. And I understand it's under control now, but we couldn't use the conference room. And I usually show 3 of my TV clips during my program. And they're short ones, but I've done it plenty of times without the clips, so we're still going to have a great time. And that'll just keep us on time, because I was told not to be too long-winded, because people in Traeger have things to do and places to go. And so, believe me, we're going to keep this under control. Well, people sometimes get curious about me and my background. And the reason they do is, you might remember me from my 21 years as the editor-in-chief of Midwest Living Magazine at Meredith Publishing in Des Moines. And I was the founder of that magazine, and I just had the privilege of watching it grow over the years and had so much fun with it. And after that, IPTV asked me to do a show called Iowa Simple Pleasures. And Iowa Simple Pleasures I did for about 10 years, and you can still see every segment, including I think the one about Traeger, on the internet. If you just plug in the words Iowa Simple Pleasures, it'll pop up, there'll be a map, and you can click on where you see Traeger is, and see the salt and pepper shaker down. But I had so much fun traveling the state. But some of my background is I grew up in Council Bluffs, right across the river from Omaha. Actually, I was born in New York State, and my wife Julie was born in Los Angeles, in Hollywood actually, and both of our parents moved back about the same time to their home areas, and we went to school together all the way through school. And quite appropriately, we started at grade school at Herbert Hoover Grade School, and went all the way through the University of Nebraska at Omaha together. And then somebody told me, hey, you should apply for a job at this publishing company in Des Moines called Meredith. And I've never even heard of Meredith. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. Well, Julie got a teaching job in Des Moines, and I got a job as a writer and editor. And I thought, well, I'm going to stick around here a year or two. Do any of you know that thing when you're young? And then I'm going to move on. Well, now it's probably pushing 45, 46 years ago, and I stayed there my whole career. Not many people do that anymore, especially in the communications field, but I just had so many great opportunities. Now Meredith is also Better Homes and Gardens, they're successful farming, and it was all started by E.T. Meredith, who came from western Iowa, a little town called Marnie in Cass County, and he became the Secretary of Agriculture and one of the founders of the 4-H movement. But even though Meredith is in all these takeover dramas because it has so many incredibly valuable TV stations now in addition to all of its magazines, it is an Iowa-based company, and we should all be very, very proud of that. Well, in about 86 or 87, along in there, somebody at Meredith had this idea for a magazine about the Midwest. And they wanted to call it Midwest Living. Ever heard of Sunset or Southern Living? If you travel south to your snowbirds, you know those magazines. Well, they thought, let's have one for the Midwest, because Meredith's a magazine publisher based right here in the middle of the heartland. But you know what the reaction was? Are you kidding? A magazine about the Midwest? It's flat, boring, flyover country. And the people there are dull, dull, dull. Why would they buy a magazine? If you publish it and you put out one issue, what's left to write about in a second issue? And that's the kind of reaction we had. Well, we started it, and thank God Meredith got behind it, and it was 400,000 circulation at the start, and it wound up at 900,000 when I left. It's a very hard time for magazines because everything's on the internet. But Iowa was right at the heart of it all, and I'm not on their payroll anymore. I haven't been a full-time employee since I hit the 35-year mark some years ago. But when I was getting towards my goal of 35 years at Meredith, and Midwest Living was doing quite well, I knew I wanted to retire. I did 3 road trips, and some of you might know me from those shows. Parklands of the Midwest, Best of the Midwest, and Taste of the Midwest. Now, Parklands was the healthiest trip, because so many beautiful parks and so many things to do. I spent 3 summers doing these books and TV series, and everywhere from Ohio to North Dakota and Kansas and Michigan, and so many beautiful things, despite what was said about the Midwest. And we all know that Iowa and the Midwest have a lot more surprises than people realize. So I did those 3 books and TV series. Taste of the Midwest was the most difficult one long term. I gained 10.5 pounds in 44 days. I tasted over 500 foods. Tasted. You know, it's not always like it looked like on TV, because they'll put a whole steaming platter in front of you of steak or spaghetti or whatever it is, and then you look like you're sitting down to eat the whole meal. Oh boy. And I was really good at that, by the way. IPTV told me, hey, you could be on a food show anytime, because I just had that knack for knowing how to drool at the right time and say, oh my gosh, what is the secret ingredient in this cookie? It's just amazing. And then as soon as the camera was off, I had to set it aside, and it would be on a table to get cold and get photographed, and then the crew would eat it, and I'd just get the bones to gnaw on it. It was wild. But, you know, a lot of you are probably like me. Over the years, your responsibilities grew in your career, and like if you're a teacher, you wound up being an administrator, or if you love farming, you might wind up in farm management or whatever. Well, in my case, I was spending more and more of my time traveling all over the country, helping them sell advertising in Atlanta and Los Angeles and New York and Seattle, and doing budgets and performance reviews and all that for my staff. So those weren't my favorite days, but these were my favorite days at the office around Iowa. And I can say one of my favorite days at the office, and the reason people would say, are they paying you to do what you do? Or I want your job, would be to go to the opera in Indianola on the Simpson College campus. Has anybody done that? At the Blank Performing Arts Center, where the Metro Des Moines Opera Company puts on an incredible series of operas every summer about this time of the year. And you're closer to the set and the stages and the performers and the music than I am to you right now, because of the way it's designed. It's just beautiful. And by the way, one caveat here. I told you try to weave in as many places in my talk as I can. But I also don't overdwell on the things in the larger Iowa cities that have the big promotional budgets, and you've heard about forever and ever. And who doesn't know you're supposed to visit the Iowa Capitol at Terrace Hill, right? So the things that are a little bit more offbeat and in smaller communities are what really attracts me the most. Well, another day at the office for me was that beautiful corner of our state, the driftless area that the glaciers didn't flatten, in northeast Iowa, those beautiful Mississippi River bluffs. I went there so many times for stories over the years, but one of my best days at the office was going to Lansing in the fall when the birds were migrating and getting on the Mississippi Explorer for an afternoon on a Sunday and seeing the Mississippi carpeted with geese and swans and ducks and all these other birds. Plus, every time I looked up on a bluff, I saw little white dots. And those little white dots were the heads of bald eagles, hundreds of them. And that's all up in the northeast corner of the state on the Mississippi opposite Wisconsin. So that was pretty amazing. Another day at the office for me was going to the Iowa State Fair and being given $125 and told to eat everything I could on a stick. Oh my gosh. That was one of my major food adventures. I was so sick by afternoon. It was one of those 95-degree August State Fair days. I felt like the big boar. My skin was pink and I was stuffed. That was as bad as the day. And this is just over the line from Iowa, but I had a day where I was filming for Taste of the Midwest and working on that book. And I went to Austin, Minnesota. Now, what's Austin famous for? Hormel and Spam. And they have a great museum that they just reopened about Spam. And I learned all about Spam. And actually, it's about the times of Spam, because that was the Great Depression and World War II era. And Spam really fed a lot of people. But I went to Johnny's Spam-O-Rama Cafe after that on a Sunday morning and had Spam chef salad, Spam omelet, Spam Denver sandwich, Spam, oh my gosh. And then they whisked me off to a little town not too far from Austin called Oslo, Minnesota. It's Norwegian country, right? Any Lutherans here? Okay. Well, you could buy a Martin Luther bobblehead doll at the Oslo General Store. Oslo's a suburb of Greater Hayfield, Minnesota, so that places it for you. Yeah. Okay, but anyway, so this was before noon, and I had the famous Norwegian Lutheran treat, lutefisk. And that was on top of my Spam buffet. And they made lutefisk, all these mashed potatoes, but also creamla and all these other treats. And then they served me aquavit to drink. And by 1 o'clock, I was back in the motel room in Austin and passed out till the next day. But now another day at the office for me was going to Fairfield, Iowa. Now, Fairfield used to have Parsons College, right? And what is that now? Maharishi University. Now, I don't know if you traveled to Fairfield, but the two groups, just think of taking Trayer and introducing a big group of transcendental meditators from around the world into your community. At first, I understand it was a bumpy ride, but now Fairfield is one of the most prosperous small towns in Iowa. And Maharishi University and Vedic City are doing quite well. Well, that day at the office, they sent me to the spa at Maharishi University. And they had this beautiful building that looks like a southern plantation. I'm not kidding you, just to see it is a treat. You go up this tree-lined alley, and then here are these huge columns, and you really think you're down south somewhere. Well, it's a spa. People come for weeks or they come for days. And I had a day trip there. So I got to eat healthy vegetarian food and meditate and do yoga. And then I got a massage and I got the oil treatment. Now you wonder what the oil treatment is? Well, I'll tell you. You sit in a chair and you lean your head back dim the lights, and then you hear this kind of funny music, nee, 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 and they're drizzling warm oil onto your forehead in this sacred spot between your eyebrows. And I didn't know if it was a Chinese water torture or a spa treatment. I'm still making up my mind about that. But that was the kind of days at the office I had. Well, as I said, I was the luckiest guy in the world to have the career I did because I love to explore and find new things. I'm kind of ADHD, so I'm always looking for the new unexpected thing. By the time I retired as editor-in-chief of Midwest Living, I was the longest tenured consumer magazine editor in the United States. And so, yeah, at that point I was having my assistant take a bite of all my food at Meredith before I eat it or drink my coffee, because you just can't be too cautious when you're getting up there in an organization. But anyway, I got out of there alive, and IPTV asked me to do Iowa Simple Pleasures. And I had more fun for 10 years until that show ran its course. As I say, it's still on the internet. Just put in the words Iowa Simple Pleasures. Just getting to know my own state and traveling all 99 of our counties. The only show and tell I actually have for you is right here. This is my state highway map. And every time I go to a town, like if I did a story for Midwest Living, this isn't just if I've been there, it's if I had a reason to be there. For Midwest Living magazine, if I did a story, or if I did a segment for an IPTV show, or if I did a program like I'm doing now. And so I've had more fun, especially getting the small ones on there. Like I never thought I'd get to Clarence, Iowa, but I got there, and I got to Burt. And Albert City, which I don't think many more were 500 in northwest Iowa, but I love it, and every time I get to circle a new town, you were already circled, so this isn't a new conquest for me. But then to all 99 counties doing my programs or my TV shows or writing for the magazine, and I am threatening to write my book about Iowa as soon as I stay put long enough. So let's talk about this wonderful state of Iowa for a minute, and then I'll throw you some ideas. What's unique about our state of Iowa out of all 50 states in terms of our boundaries? I'll make it easy. What rivers? How many? How many rivers? Now, I think I heard somebody say 4. Who is the person that said 4? There's a smarty pants in every group. And that lady is the smarty pants. Okay, there are 4 rivers, and people usually just think of the one that's our entire eastern boundary, which is an international treasure, the Mississippi River. So many fun things to do and explore all up and down the river from Keokuk up to Lansing and beyond. But on the western side, people always think of the Missouri, that Lewis and Clark traveled up over 200 years ago and got the first European glimpse of our state from that side. But also, if you go to northwest Iowa, they always get it right that the Big Sioux is our boundary with South Dakota, okay? And that's a substantial part of our boundary up there. But if you go to southeast Iowa, around Keokuk, ever heard of the Honey Wars? Holy cow. Well, way back in the 1840s, Iowa and Missouri hadn't worked out their boundary. And they actually activated their militias to fight each other to determine who was going to settle the boundary line. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court, which decided in Iowa's favor mainly. But the town of Keokuk, if you look on a map in Lee County in southeast Iowa, hangs down from that straight line that's the rest of the state. And the western boundary of Iowa in Lee County is the Des Moines River. So that's 4 rivers. And the reason that was called the Honey Wars, which nobody got killed, thank goodness, was because on that land, part of the issue was taxation and ownership of these trees that had all kinds of honeybee hives in them. And at that time, there wasn't that much sugar in that you couldn't run down to the supermarket you have like you do here on your main street. and pick up a bag of sugar, honey was really important. So that conflict was called the Honey Wars. Well, our state is famous for something else. We're just about in the middle of everything. We're kind of in the middle of the U.S. I think the caucuses come here every 4 years, no matter what they say about Iowa not being appropriate, because we're so balanced. You know, if you're in Sioux County, Iowa, in northwest Iowa, you think the whole world's Republican. If you're in Johnson County, where Iowa City is, you think the whole world is Democratic. But we are the most balanced state politically in the nation, if you look at our state as a whole. So we're pretty much in the middle that way. We're very balanced between farms, small towns, and cities, reflecting our nation as it is now. And we're also in the middle in size, 56,000 square miles, 200 by 300 miles, and population, about 3.1 million. Even when it comes to income, and 50-some thousand median income per household on the average, we're just about in the middle of the nation. Where we excel and where we're set apart from the rest of the nation is things like best places to retire or be a retiree, best health care, best education, best taking care of senior citizens in terms of social programs, most safe states, which is something I never thought I'd talk about that much, but just think of what's happening in the world, even just today, and in the United States, and think how lucky we are to live in one of the safest states in the nation. And just recently, Iowa got named one of the top 10 best states to do business in the nation. So we have a lot of ways we excel, but we're also very typical of the nation in a lot of ways. What do you think is our biggest industry in Iowa? Agriculture. Now, agriculture is certainly up there, but in terms of revenues and employment, did you know insurance and finance are the biggest industry? And if you live in Urbandale, I live in Urbandale with my wife Julie and have 2 kids and grandkids in the area, but also part of the year at Spirit Lake off and on. So I get the state covered. But insurance and finance, especially in the Des Moines area or certain like Cedar Rapids, people are very aware of those industries. But also, and I guess it gets back to agriculture, which is so important to our state. You know, 25% of the grade A farming soil in the United States is in Iowa, and 10% of the grade A black rich dirt in the world is in Iowa. And that's quite remarkable. So some industries related to agriculture, besides us being #1 for corn, soybeans, hogs, eggs most of the time, and doing pretty well with cattle and a number of other crops. But Iowa is also just a home for biotechnology, food processing, and then manufacturing, like, anybody ever heard of John Deere? Agricultural related equipment and advanced manufacturing. So a lot going on in our state. And one thing that makes me really proud is, if you think Iowa's kind of behind the times and